My beloved child, pause for a moment not to be afraid, but to see clearly. There are moments in life that do not arrive with noise, do not announce themselves through dramatic events, yet carry enough weight to shift the entire trajectory of destiny. This moment is one of them. Light does not strike like thunder, it spreads gradually, patiently. And precisely because of that, many mistake it for silence. But my child, silence does not mean absence. Silence is heaven's way of preparing a word that is exact, strong enough to expose what has long been hidden. You are standing at the boundary between two understandings of strength. The old understanding says that to react is to exist. To speak up is to defend oneself. To prove is to remain clean. That understanding once helped you survive many stretches of the road, but it no longer fits where you are now. A new understanding is being placed into your hands, the strength of clarity, of peace that is not provoked, of choices that are not rushed. You are not called to fight in chaos. You are called to stand steady in the light. And that light does not need you to shout, it only needs you to be in the right place. You have sensed this for a long time, even without having words for it. A slight misalignment in conversations that seemed harmless. A hesitation in the eyes of someone who once said they stood with you. Words of protection that sounded caring, yet subtly placed you in a position where you had to explain more than before. These things did not arrive all at once. They came scattered, like separate fragments. And because your heart is gentle, you tried to arrange them in the kindest way, hoping you had misunderstood. But my child, the intuition placed within you is not meant to be ignored. It is a small lamp, sufficient to guide you when everything else is deliberately blurred. Heaven is not calling you to fear what is being prepared in the shadows. On the contrary, heaven is calling you to be awake. Awakening is not about distrusting everything. It is about recognizing patterns when they repeat. When questions are asked not to understand, but to record. When kindness appears not to heal, but to create a sense of obligation. When your silence is interpreted in ways that do not belong to you. You do not need more evidence to know that a story is being written, and that your name has been placed into it without your consent. But my child, that story is not the final chapter. Remember that in Scripture, Joseph was sold by those who shared his blood. And at that time every piece of evidence stood against him. The blood-stained coat became the true story in the eyes of many. Yet truth does not die simply because it is buried for a season. Truth has its own breath. It waits for the right moment to rise. You are not called to tear that coat apart before the crowd. You are called to keep your heart upright, and to let time, never an ally of falsehood, do the rest. There are traps that are not built with ropes or locks, but with emotions. They target your reactions, not your actions. They wait for you to grow tired, to become irritated, to speak impulsively so that later your words can be cut out of context. You do not need to fear these traps if you know where you are standing. Your peace is not avoidance, it is a strategic position. When you do not react the way they anticipate, the mechanism falters, and when it falters, fragments of truth begin to fall away. Do not confuse silence with the surrender of your voice. Silence at this moment is a deliberate choice, restraint born of understanding. You are holding space for the light to do its own work. Light does not need you to justify yourself. It only needs you not to interfere. There is one who sees the entire picture, including the smallest details you cannot reach. He does not need hints. He has timing. And when that time arrives, whispers will no longer be able to stand against clarity. You may feel as though time is stretching on, as if everything is suspended. But hear this clearly, time does not weaken truth, it sharpens it. Each day you remain composed is another layer of paint stripped from a fabricated narrative. Each time you choose not to enter a futile argument, you lay another stone in the foundation of your freedom. You are not forgotten in this waiting space. The waiting itself is where you are being protected from decisions you would later regret. Some will appear eager, as though they want to help you wrap everything up quickly. But urgency is not the language of light. Light does not push, it leads. If you feel pressured to sign, to agree, to explain immediately, pause. Peace is your compass. When that compass tilts, do not move forward. You owe no one a reaction. You owe yourself honesty toward what you are sensing. What is unfolding is not meant to shrink you. It is expanding your ground. There are stages that only collapse when light floods in. Before that, they appear solid. You do not need to be the one who pushes. Light is heavy enough to do that on its own. Your part is to remain consistent, to speak when speaking is required, and to be silent when silence protects more. This is not the strategy of the weak. It is the mark of maturity. Let this opening be sealed deeply within you. You are not walking into humiliation. You are passing through exposure. Exposure is always uncomfortable for those who rely on darkness, but it is the beginning of freedom for those who stand with truth. You are not being placed into a cage. You are standing before a door, and that door does not open by force, it opens by clarity. When you hold to that, you will see that what was constructed to bind you is quietly dismantling itself, joint by joint. My beloved child, after light begins to speak, what follows is not hurried action, but position. Some confuse doing something with standing in the right place. But heaven does not measure your strength by the number of reactions you produce. Heaven looks at how steady you remain when everything begins to tilt. This position does not come from calculation. It comes from a deep understanding that you do not need to chase a story written by others. You stand still, and in that stillness, it becomes clear who is pushing, who is pulling, and who is constructing the scene. You will notice that when you are no longer swept into their hurried rhythm, the true rhythm begins to emerge. There will be invitations wrapped in reasonableness, offers to help you settle things quickly, advice for your own good, doors that open too fast. But, my child, what comes from light does not need pressure. When you feel peace being asked to step aside in exchange for convenience, stop. Peace is not decoration, it is confirmation. When that confirmation is absent, you are not lacking information, you are lacking inner consent. Your position right now is the position of one who understands the value of waiting. Waiting does not weaken you, it separates you from choices that would bind you later. In Scripture, David had many chances to end things early by acting first, yet he chose to wait not out of fear, but because he refused to lay his hand on what had not yet been given to him. My child, not every opportunity is permission. Some doors open to test your heart to see whether you will preserve precision. When you hold this position, something unusual begins to happen. Alternative narratives start to surface. Others speak on your behalf. Interpret your silence. Assign motives to your choices. Do not rush to correct them. Correction at this moment would draw you onto a stage they have already built. Let them speak long enough for contradictions to reveal themselves. Falsehood requires many words to stand. Truth needs only consistency to remain. Each time you do not interrupt, you give truth more room to breathe. You may feel pressure increasing not because you are wrong, but because your steadiness exposes their unease. When someone accustomed to controlling through emotion encounters calm, they often turn up the volume. They will label it directness, transparency, decisiveness. But listen with your body. What is your breathing telling you? Does your chest feel light? If the answer is no, you do not need further arguments to stop. Light never asks you to betray your honest inner sensing. This position also requires that you curate your presence. Not everyone is worthy of your silence. Some meetings are arranged to pull you away from your center of peace, to capture a reaction, to manufacture evidence. You do not need to avoid them. You need boundaries, time, space, purpose. Everything must be clear. Ambiguity is the language of traps. Clarity is the language of light. When you stand in the right place, you begin to see that true power is not loud. It does not need immediate victories to validate itself. True power keeps you from being pushed away from who you are. You do not become cold. You become precise in speech, in choice, in whom you allow into your sphere of influence. And when you are precise, manipulation loses its footing. A subtle reversal is taking place. Those who once believed you needed them to be safe are beginning to realize that you are safe even without them. That realization is uncomfortable. It touches their deepest fear, the fear of losing control. At that point, they may try again, through excessive softness, through apologies without change, through promises without foundation. You do not need to reject them with bitterness. You only need to hold your standard. Your standard is not punishment, it is protection. Remember this, your position is not aimed at anyone. It is aimed at truth. When you stand for truth, you do not need to know who will leave. What cannot withstand light will choose darkness on its own. You do not lose when that happens. You are released. And in that release, you begin to hear more clearly, not the noise around you, but the guiding rhythm within. There will be days when you wonder whether you should say one more sentence. Explain one more time. When that question arises, return to the simple sign, peace. If peace diminishes as you prepare to speak, wait. If peace increases when you remain still, you already have your answer. Light is not afraid of time. Light uses time as an ally. This position is the foundation for everything that follows. When the foundation is firm, the twists of the story cannot make you fall. You are not suspended in silence. You are being placed in the most advantageous position for truth to reveal itself. And when it does, you will not need to chase it. It will come to you, whole and clear. My beloved child, when you are standing in the right place and maintaining the rhythm of peace, you will notice a very subtle movement taking place, quiet, unshowy, yet unmistakable to the awake. It is a reversal, not a reversal by human power, but by the law of light. What is built on ambiguity begins to tremble when illuminated. What relies on manipulation loses force when it has no reaction to cling to. You do not need to make the reversal happen. You only need not to interfere with it. The reversal begins in small details. A story changes because there is no one left to confirm it. A plan must be adjusted because it lacks one crucial piece, your reaction. A tone becomes hurried, as if someone is trying to close things before light draws too near. You will see their familiar rhythm slip, and that slippage is the sign. Light is not rushed. It works with precision. When you do not pursue, truth has time to stand upright. Some will try to interpret your calm as indifference or avoidance. But my child, calm is not retreating. Calm is staying without being pulled. It is the rare capacity of one who understands that dignity is not defended through argument, but through consistency. When you do not change your tone under pressure, do not change direction with public opinion, you give light a fixed axis to rotate around. And once that axis is set, everything else must realign. The reversal also unfolds within you. Questions that once stole your sleep begin to settle, not because you suddenly have all the answers, but because you no longer need them to move forward. You understand that some things become clear only when you step out of their center. Just as Moses stepped back and the sea parted, you too learn to make room for power, to work not your power, but the power of truth. As light draws nearer, masks grow heavy. Those who wear them must exert more energy to keep appearances intact, and that effort exposes cracks. You will hear self-contradictory words, see hurried decisions, sense defensiveness in those who once seemed confident. Do not rejoice in this. You do not need to. The reversal is not about you winning over someone, but about truth being returned to its rightful place. Your joy is peace, the peace that comes from no longer being pulled into the old spiral. There may come a moment when you are invited to speak up for clarity. Discern carefully, does this invitation arise from a desire to heal, or from a fear of being exposed? If it is the latter, you do not need to respond. Light does not require you to serve as an emotional witness. Time is the most impartial witness of all. It preserves every trace, so that when the picture is complete, no one can say they did not know. Reversal also carries a deep lesson. Not every connection can be saved by endurance. Some bonds exist only as long as you are willing to carry the heavier load. When you set that weight down, the bond dissolves on its own. This does not speak of your inadequacy, it reveals the true limit of that connection. Light does not destroy what is good, it simply brings to an end what has already run its course. During this season, tend to your body and to the rhythm of your life. Light works most effectively when you are still enough to hear. Keep your schedule simple. Choose fewer meetings, but ones marked by clarity. Saying no earlier is better than saying sorry too late. These small choices draw little attention, yet they reinforce your stance. And when your stance is steady, you no longer need to look back to see who is keeping up. What belongs to you will adjust its pace naturally. Reversal does not always conclude with a dramatic moment. Sometimes it ends with a quiet acknowledgement you have passed through without losing yourself, passed through without carrying bitterness, passed through with your dignity intact. And within that acknowledgement, doors that once closed not as punishment, but as protection begin to open in a natural way, without persuasion, without explanation. Remember this as you close. Part I, light does not require perfection, it requires honesty. Honesty with what you feel, with the rhythm you must keep, with the boundaries you need to establish. When you are honest, reversal becomes inevitable. No one needs to be diminished for you to be lifted. Light raises you by placing you where you belong, where truth can speak its own part. My beloved child, when reversal has made itself known and light has set you in the right position, a deeper movement begins to unfold, divine justice. This justice does not resemble human judgment. It needs no crowd, no accusations, and no demand from you to reclaim what was lost. It operates quietly, precisely, and cannot be bent by emotion or power. Divine justice does not ask what you want. It asks where you are and when you are in the right place. Justice finds you. Do not expect justice to arrive like a storm. It comes as order returning after a long season of disruption. Pieces that once scattered begin to align in a natural way. Words that were constructed to conceal no longer find anything to cling to. Relationships built on ambiguity gradually lose their force. Divine justice does not need to expose every detail. It only needs to place everything under the light long enough for truth to stand upright on its own. You may recognize justice at work through signs that are quiet rather than dramatic, a conversation postponed without clear reason, a decision withdrawn at the last moment, a promise suddenly becoming difficult for the one who made it to keep. These are not punishments, they are corrections. When a system is built on misalignment, it begins to malfunction as soon as light intervenes. You do not need to rejoice in that malfunction. You only need to continue forward in your own rhythm. My child, divine justice differs from retaliation in this way: it does not take away to compensate. It restores to proper order. It returns honor to its rightful owner. It places responsibility where it belongs. It assigns consequence to the correct action. You are not the one who commissions justice. You are the one protected from the need to administer it yourself. That protection keeps you from choices that would cloud the light within you. In Scripture, Daniel did not flee when he was placed in a carefully constructed legal trap, nor did he attempt to bend the law to save himself. He remained in the rhythm of prayer, and that rhythm ushered divine justice into the situation. The lions did not become gentle because Daniel was stronger. They became restrained because a higher order intervened. My child, there are lions in your story as well, bound by that same order, not for your satisfaction, but so that you may pass through unharmed. As divine justice moves, you may experience a paradox. External pressure increases while inner peace deepens. Do not be troubled by this. Pressure rises because old structures are struggling to maintain their shape. Peace deepens because you no longer stand within their field of influence. These two movements run parallel until one is exhausted. And, my child, darkness is always the first to tire because it must hide, while light does not. There may be offers to resolve things quietly. Discern carefully. Divine justice does not require outward smoothness. It requires correct placement. If a solution asks you to trade clarity for temporary calm, it is not justice, it is delay. You do not need to be harsh, you need to be precise. Precise in boundaries, in terms, in the way you say. Let me review this. When you are precise, justice has the space it needs to complete its work. Divine justice is also at work within you. It separates you from the need for immediate validation. It loosens the habit of self-doubt whenever you are misunderstood. It teaches you that true honor does not need emotional defense. It is preserved through consistency. When you walk in that consistency, whispered narratives lose their power to define you. And when they lose power, they dissolve on their own. Pay attention to one important sign: you no longer need to persuade yourself. Decisions arrive with less weight. No is spoken sooner. Yes is given when peace confirms it. This is divine justice, recalibrating your inner compass. That compass does more than steer you away from traps. It guides you to the next rightful position, where doors open without being pushed. Do not be surprised if others begin to alter their version of the story. Not because they suddenly understand everything, but because divine justice is narrowing the space of ambiguity. As that space shrinks, they are forced to choose truth or silence. And my child, silence, at this stage, no longer works against you. It protects you, because what needs to be spoken has already been spoken by the light itself. My beloved child, when divine justice has begun its work, an unavoidable phenomenon follows. Truth finds its own voice, not through grand declarations, nor through tense confrontations, but through the precise arrangement of circumstances. What was once hidden does not need to be dragged into the light. It slips out of the shadows on its own when there is nothing left to hold it there. You will see this unfold in very ordinary ways, and it is precisely that ordinariness that makes it impossible to deny. Truth does not require you to gather evidence. When the time is right, evidence appears on its own. A document surfaces at the wrong moment for the one who holds it. A story is retold with unnecessary details that expose contradictions. A message is sent to the wrong person. A sentence slips out before it can be corrected. These mistakes are not accidental. They are the consequence of the pressure to maintain a structure that is not built on truth. Light works through patience, and that patience forces what is false to reveal itself. Do not confuse truth with noise. Truth rarely needs a large stage. It only needs the right people, at the right time. When you do not rush to clear your name, you allow the truth to choose the moment when it steps forward, the moment when all counter-arguments are weak. You do not need to persuade anyone. You only need not to obstruct the current that is already forming. Each time you keep your peace in the face of provocation, you forego an opportunity to distort the picture. You may notice that those who once sounded very certain begin to appear uneasy, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are trying to remember a story that has been edited too many times. Truth does not need to be memorized, it remains. Deception must be managed, and when that management becomes heavy, gaps appear. You do not need to point out those gaps. Let their weight do the work. In Scripture, when Jeremiah was falsely accused, he did not open a courtroom for his emotions. He entrusted his case to the one who sees the heart, and over time, the accusations collapsed on their own for lack of foundation. My child, what is happening to you follows the same order. Truth does not need to be defended with anger. It is preserved by time and light. When these two meet, everything else must adjust. Pay attention to a key sign. People begin asking you questions they never asked before, not out of curiosity, but because the old narrative no longer convinces them. Those questions do not demand that you defend yourself. They open a space for truth to enter through the front door. If you answer briefly, honestly, without embellishment. Brevity is the companion of truth. There may be moments when you are advised to explain everything clearly so it can end. Discern the source of that advice. If it comes from fear of losing control, it will push you to say more than is necessary. If it comes from light, it will not push. Light gives you the right to wait, and that right does not weaken you. It makes you harder to trap. Every trap needs haste to close. When truth speaks for itself, your role is simple. Keep your words aligned with your life. No long arguments are needed, only consistent living. Consistent in how you work, in how you keep your word, in how you face pressure. That consistency is the strongest evidence, stronger than any file of documents. Observers do not need to be convinced. They recognize it. There may come a moment when you hear the words, "We didn't know it was like this." My child, that is not your victory. It is the restoration of order. You do not need to claim credit. Divine justice does not credit individuals. It corrects what has been misaligned. When order returns, doors that were closed because of misunderstanding begin to open, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough for you to step through. When truth speaks for itself, it also frees you from another burden, the need to be understood immediately. You learn that some people only understand when light has shone long enough. That does not reflect your worth, it reflects their pace of maturity. When you do not force understanding, you protect your heart from bitterness. A heart without bitterness is where light chooses to remain. Truth does not require you to be its messenger. You only need to be its receiver, receiving the rhythm of waiting, receiving precision, receiving a peace that deepens. As you receive in this way, the pieces continue to fall into their proper places. and you will see you are not escaping a trap. You are stepping onto a new path, where everything opens through clarity. My beloved child, when truth has spoken for itself and divine justice has restored order, what follows unfolds almost inevitably. Responsibility returns to its rightful place, not through loud verdicts or grand declarations, but through the natural consequences of choice. What was once pushed onto your shoulders, faults that were not yours, burdens you did not create, begins to slip from your hands. They return to where they originated, quietly yet irreversibly. You will recognize this shift through a very clear sensation. You feel lighter, not because everything is finished, but because you are no longer carrying what belongs to someone else. Light does not allow responsibility to drift. It places each matter back at its source. And when that happens, those who once hid behind ambiguity face a choice: either take ownership or let consequences speak for them. You do not need to witness every moment. Order does not need an audience. Some stories were once told in ways that made you appear to be the cause. But when responsibility returns to the right person, the story changes its tone. Details previously omitted become significant. Timelines that were rushed are revisited. Collective decisions are seen for what they were: personal choices. Light does not need to dig. It only needs to ask the right question, and the right question always finds its answer. Understand this: responsibility returning to its rightful place is not about punishment. It is about ending the cycle. When responsibility is misplaced, the cycle continues because the one carrying it does not have the authority to repair it. When responsibility returns to its source, the possibility of repair appears. Whether that person chooses to repair or not, your cycle has ended. You are freed from having to prove that you were not the cause. In Scripture, Esther did not need to point fingers for justice to take place. She simply stood in the right position, spoke what needed to be spoken, at the right time. The rest, the consequences of the scheme, returned on their own to where they were created. My child, that order is still at work today. No one can sustain a structure built on blame forever. Sooner or later, its own weight will bring it down. When responsibility returns to its rightful owner, you may see increased defensiveness on the other side. Do not mistake that for strength. Heightened defensiveness is a sign of inner pressure. When there is no longer anywhere to push, one must hold, and holding is exhausting. You do not need to respond to that exhaustion. Your peace is not a challenge. It is a boundary. That boundary says, "This is no longer mine." There may be apologies, some sincere, some offered to relieve pressure. You are not required to process them all. Forgiveness does not require proximity. You can forgive in your heart while maintaining necessary distance. Divine justice does not ask you to return to the place that wounded you to prove that you are healed. Your healing is measured by your ability to keep standards, not by enduring more. Watch for another sign. Consequences begin to surface, not all at once, but enough for observers to understand that the story has shifted. Decisions once shielded by reputation begin to be questioned. Words once trusted begin to require verification. This is not light taking revenge. This is responsibility returning home. And when responsibility returns home, you are no longer at the center of the storm. In this season, you are being invited to do something very simple, yet deeply important. Do not intervene. Do not edit the new story. Do not try to help someone carry the consequences that belong to them. Your kindness is genuine. But kindness is not the same as taking on another's burden. When you carry what is not yours, you unintentionally delay order. Allow each person to bear their own portion. This is the only way a cycle can come to a true and complete end. You may sense a very gentle sadness, not because of loss, but because of recognition. The recognition that some connections only stood because you were carrying responsibility that was never meant to be yours. The recognition that some promises had no foundation. This sadness is healthy. It marks maturity. Do not rush to push it away. Let it pass through you, and then make space for the lightness that follows. When sadness moves through without pulling you backward, you know you have become free. My beloved child, when the heavy portion has left your hands and responsibility has returned to where it truly belongs, you will notice a subtle yet decisive shift. Protection no longer functions merely as a shield. It begins to guide. There are seasons when heaven places a shield before you so that you are not harmed. There are other seasons when heaven lowers the shield, not because you are less safe, but because you are ready to move forward. When protection transforms into guidance, you no longer ask, "How do I avoid it?" You begin to hear a new question: where am I being led? This guidance is not loud. It arrives through increasing clarity. Choices that once felt blurred suddenly separate cleanly. Paths that once looked appealing but drained, you now lose their pull. Doors that were once closed, not as punishment, but as protection, begin to open without force. You do not chase signs. Signs meet you when you keep your rhythm. And your rhythm now is a peaceful one, with direction. You may recognize guidance through a curious pattern, fewer options, but truer ones. Heaven does not scatter to confuse you. Heaven refines to make you precise. When you no longer have to weigh too many possibilities, your energy is restored to where it belongs. You begin to do the things that were always yours to do without strain, without proving yourself. This ease does not come from luck, it comes from alignment. In Scripture, when Abraham left the land he knew, he was not given a detailed map. He was given direction. My child, guidance works the same way. It does not outline every step, it establishes an axis. That axis is the truth you have held, the peace you refuse to trade away, the boundaries you did not break. Once the axis is set, each next step finds its place. You do not need to see everything in order to trust. You only need to take the step that is before you. Learn to distinguish between pressure and invitation. Pressure tightens you. Invitation illuminates you. Pressure rushes and demands quick results. Invitation is patient and honors your rhythm. When an opportunity arrives that asks you to ignore what you have learned, to cross boundaries, to silence intuition, to abandon clarity that is not guidance. True guidance never contradicts the light already placed within you. You may feel a very small fear when standing before a new step, not fear of harm, but fear of the responsibility that comes with expansion. When you are guided, you no longer hide behind defense. You step forward with full presence. That presence carries weight. It asks you to live according to what you know. But my child, you have already been living rightly. What is new here is not the demand, but the reach. Light does not only keep you safe, light wants to move through you. Guidance will also refine the relationships around you, not through abrupt cutting, but through adjustment of rhythm. Those who cannot walk at the same pace will naturally slow down. Those who share the same axis will naturally draw near. You do not need to arrange this. Guidance does that work. When you are no longer defensive, you no longer attract connections built on tension. You attract connections rooted in truth. Pay attention to the quiet joy returning to you. Not fleeting excitement, but the sense of being rightly placed. You work without being depleted. You say no without guilt. You say yes without explanation. This joy is a confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. Light does not only clear the path, light walks with you. There will be days when you feel tempted to look back to check whether things have truly ended. But my child, guidance always faces forward. What has been completed does not need you to guard it. When you linger too long looking back, you miss what is opening ahead. Trust that protection has finished its part. Now your part is to step with humility, step with precision, a step with quiet faith. There is an important principle in this season: move more slowly so that you may go farther. Guidance does not push you to run, it teaches you to choose a sustainable pace. A sustainable pace does not impress immediately, but it accumulates. And when enough has accumulated, your progress becomes difficult to reverse, not because you strive, but because order stands with you. My beloved child, when guidance has become clear, you will begin to notice a rule very different from what you once knew. Doors that open no longer require you to knock forcefully. They open when you arrive at the right place, with the right rhythm and the right posture, not because you have persuaded enough, but because the timing has ripened. Some doors once closed made you believe you were being rejected, but now you understand they closed so you would not enter too early, while your heart was still pulled by defense and exhaustion. When guidance replaces shielding, timing becomes the key. You will recognize this through an ordered ease. Not everything will be effortless, but everything will have direction. Encounters arise naturally, without complicated arrangements. Offers come with clear terms, without ambiguity. Opportunities align with the values you have learned to keep, never asking you to trade peace for progress. This is not luck, this is alignment, and alignment is the language of guidance. In this season, you will see new companionship placed beside you, quiet, unintrusive, not driven by urgency. These people do not require you to prove your worth. They recognize value through consistency, not promotion. They come not to fill emptiness, but to resonate. You no longer have to strain to maintain connection. The shared rhythm sustains it. And when a shared rhythm is present, cooperation becomes light. Pay attention to an important sign: you are no longer being pulled back toward the past to finish things. Stories that once felt unresolved now close on their own, without the need for final words. Relationships that were once ambiguous naturally separate when there is no longer energy sustaining them. You do not need to return to prove that you have changed. Maturity does not require an audience. When you move forward in a new rhythm, what does not belong to that rhythm cannot keep up, and this no longer causes you pain. Guidance also teaches you how to receive a skill you once found difficult, to receive help appropriately, to receive affirmation without defending yourself, to receive opportunity without diminishing who you are. Receiving is not dependence. Receiving is honoring the order that is at work. When you receive rightly, you are not indebted, you are participating. And true partnership, when entered rightly, always strengthens both sides. In Scripture, when Elijah was led to the brook Cherith, provision came in ways that were entirely unexpected, not because he searched for it, but because he was in the right place. My child, the opening of doors in your life works the same way. When you are rightly positioned in values, in rhythm, in truth, provision comes looking for you. It does not need spectacle to prove its power. It needs proper alignment in order to function. Discern carefully between an open door and a dazzling one. An open door leaves you clearer after you walk through it. A dazzling door exhausts you even before you enter. If an opportunity requires unhealthy secrecy, avoidance of reasonable questions, or the surrender of boundaries that have already been set. It is not guidance, it is a test. True guidance does not pull you back into lessons you have already outgrown. Arranged companionship carries a distinct quality, as well respect for personal rhythm. No one pressures you to move faster in order to keep pace with them. No one uses closeness to rush you into premature decisions. Each step leaves room for reflection. When you sense that kind of space, trust that you are within a healthy order. Healthy order is not threatened by questions, it welcomes them. When doors open at the right time, you will find yourself exerting less effort, yet traveling farther. Energy is preserved for creating, for building, for caring for what truly matters. You are no longer scattered by conflicting signals. Your focus deepens, and with it your influence quiet, not performative, but enduring. Others recognize this, not through what you say, but through the quality of your presence. There will be moments when you are invited to turn back because of old opportunities. Remember this, real opportunities do not require you to shrink. If returning demands that you abandon the clarity you now possess, it is not an opportunity, it is a loop. Guidance always leads you forward. It does not pull you back to places where the lesson has already been learned. Trusting this will protect you from late compromises. The right door opens when you are ready to step forward as your whole self, without shielding, without defense, without borrowed roles. And the right companionship arrives to walk with you in that authentic self. When this happens, you do not need to question whether you are on the right path. Peace with direction answers for you. My beloved child, when doors have opened at the right time and companionship has been aligned to the right rhythm, you will sense the next movement, expansion. Not expansion through display or competition, but expansion through the removal of what once obstructed the flow that truly belongs to you. Before, each step forward was met with resistance, a doubt, an ambiguous tie, a responsibility that was never yours. Now those forces have fallen away, quietly, without drama, simply absent. And it is precisely this absence that creates space. This expansion does not require you to become someone else. On the contrary, it happens when you are fully yourself. You speak in your own voice, work at your own pace, and make decisions according to a compass that has been recalibrated. When you are no longer fragmented by the need to please many directions, your energy gathers. Focus is not contraction. Focus is the condition for sustainable expansion. What is built in fragmentation soon collapses. What is built in focus endures. You will recognize expansion through a very tangible sign. Your influence returns without you needing to call it by name. Others listen to you not because you speak more, but because you speak what is right. They come to you not because you make promises, but because they sense reliability. That trust does not come from appearance, it is born from consistency refined through trial. When light places you in the right position, influence is no longer a burden, it becomes a channel. Understand this deeply true expansion is never rushed. It grows according to the rhythm of the roots. Roots need time and darkness to anchor firmly. Then, when the ground is ready, the tree rises without being pushed. You have been in the root stage for a long time, years of being unseen, often misunderstood, but those roots are now sufficient. Therefore, when you rise, you are not easily toppled by opposing winds. Your steadiness is not displayed, it is felt. In Scripture, when Jeroboam sought to expand his kingdom by manipulating the hearts of people, the foundation collapsed. By contrast, when Samuel kept his heart upright, his influence spread across generations, not through power, but through credibility before God. My child, that order still operates. Expansion is protected when it walks with integrity. And you have learned integrity toward your discernment, your boundaries, and the light. You may feel a passing fear. Am I enough for this new level of influence, my child? Do not measure the present with old memories. The you of today is no longer the you of defensive seasons. You have been guided, refined, and realigned. New influence does not require you to do more. It requires you to keep the standard. Keep the standard in concise speech. Keep the standard in choices that carry peace. Keep the standard by refusing to compromise with ambiguity. When you keep the standard, influence remains at the right size, never beyond your strength, never reduced by fear. Expansion also brings a new responsibility, the responsibility of light. Not the responsibility to save everyone, but the responsibility not to create noise. You do not need to have an opinion on everything. You do not need to appear everywhere. Selective presence is how you keep light from being diluted. When you speak, let your words be sufficient. When you are silent, let that silence carry weight. Weight comes from consistency that others have already tested. As influence is restored, new tests will arrive not to bring you down, but to confirm you. These tests are subtler. They invite you to expand faster than your rhythm, to speak more than necessary, or to compromise slightly so you can go further. Remember what you have learned. Go slowly to go far. Each time you choose a sustainable pace, you place another safety marker for the future. These markers do not appear immediately, but they hold the path. You will notice another phenomenon. Those who once underestimated you begin to adjust how they see you. Not all will admit it, and they do not need to. The adjustment shows in how they ask, how they listen, how they respect your boundaries. You do not need to reclaim honor with words. Honor returns on its own when light remains long enough. And when honor returns, you do not carry resentment, you carry maturity. Expansion is not only external, it is internal. You feel space to breathe, to create, to rest. Rest is no longer avoidance. Rest becomes strategy. Rest helps you keep rhythm, keep brightness, keep sensitivity. Those who do not know how to rest soon lose discernment. Those who do know how to rest go far without burning out. You learned this lesson at a cost. Now, keep it, my beloved child. When expansion stabilizes and influence returns to the true measure of light, another movement unfolds. Honor is restored. Honor does not return through applause, nor through carefully staged apologies. It returns through clarity. Clarity about who said what, did what, when, and why. Clarity about what belonged to you and what never did. Light does not need you to argue for vindication. Light rearranges the context, so truth stands in its proper place. This restoration may surprise you, because it happens in plain sight without placing you at the center. Whispers that once moved quickly in darkness begin to slow when brought into the open. Not everyone speaks loudly. Many choose silence. But this silence is no longer evidence against you. It becomes the empty space where falsehood no longer has enough strength to exist. When light remains long enough, stories without foundation collapse on their own, not because they are attacked, but because they cannot stand. You will see the first signs of this public unraveling in very ordinary details: a brief correction, a changed attitude, a decision quietly reversed without lengthy explanation. Sometimes it is simply the way your name is spoken now with new caution, new respect. This is not victory, it is order returning. And when order returns, Honor does not need to be given, it claims itself. Remember that true honor does not require defense. Defense often makes people speak more than necessary. Honor requires conciseness, the conciseness of a consistent life. When you work with precision, keep your word on time, and meet pressure with peace. You are laying stones that cannot be denied. Observers may question words, but they cannot refute a rhythm of life. That rhythm is the most enduring evidence. In Scripture, Job was not restored because he argued well or won debates. He was restored when divine order reset the right questions and delivered the right answers at the right time. My child, something similar is unfolding. You are not being lifted so others may be pushed down. Rather, truth is being lifted, and everything else falls into its rightful place. When truth is raised, lies do not need to be exposed, they reveal themselves. You may feel a very subtle temptation, the temptation to say more as honor begins to return, to speak in order to close the matter, to put a period at the end. But my child, light does not need your punctuation. Light needs you to keep the rhythm. When you speak more in order to finish quickly, you may unintentionally open another cycle. Let order do its work. The most stable restoration is the one that requires no explanation. The public collapse of falsehood also carries a lesson for you. Do not be too quick to believe appearances of collapse. Some structures fall in words but remain standing in habit. You do not need to monitor every movement. You only need to continue living rightly. Light addresses both speech and habit, but in its own rhythm. When you are not drawn into constant checking, you preserve your energy for what is opening ahead of you. When honor is restored, relationships will be reshaped. Some will draw closer with renewed respect. Others will keep their distance because former advantages no longer exist. You do not need to judge who is right or wrong. Observe the rhythm. Rhythms that are healthy will remain. Rhythms built on ambiguity will depart on their own. Honor does not pull people back, it filters them out. You may hear words such as, "We misunderstood." My child, a corrected misunderstanding is not a debt you are required to collect. You do not need to nod or shake your head to complete a formality. What matters is what comes next. Restored honor does not return to the past to fix every detail. It orients the future so patterns are not repeated. When you keep the standard, the future adjusts itself. Notice another sign of restoration. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself when the story is mentioned. You can recount it without heat. You can reference it without needing to prove anything. You set the context, then move on. This is the sign that you have slipped free from the pull of falsehood. When the story no longer drags you backward, you know you are free. Restored honor also calls for a new kind of humility. Not humility born of fear of being misunderstood, but humility that understands the weight of light. That weight teaches you to speak less, choose more carefully, and appear in the right places. When light places you higher, each step you take carries a broader impact. Caution is not fear, it is responsibility. Carry this truth with you. True honor does not come to make you look back, it comes to help you move forward. The public collapse of falsehood is not meant to satisfy emotional justice, but to clear the way for what is new and unhindered. You do not need everyone to fully understand before you step ahead. You only need sufficient light, and that light is already here. My beloved child, when honor has returned to its rightful place and falsehood begins to fall in public, another movement follows quiet. Yet, irreversible confession emerges. Not every confession is spoken from a high platform. Many arrive in stillness, in brief conversations, in unguarded words that slip out without protection. Confession does not always take the form of "I was wrong." Sometimes it appears as the inability to sustain the old story. And when a story can no longer be sustained, it has confessed through its own collapse. You will recognize that confession does not arise because people suddenly become courageous, but because the pressure of truth has crossed a threshold. False power, power built on image, position, or manipulation only survives when there is shadow to hide within. When light narrows that shadow, false power loses its footing. It can no longer cling to fear, nor be fed by the haste of others. And then, what was once kept hidden begins to slip out naturally, inevitably. Discern this clearly. Confession does not come to gratify you. It comes to restore order. When order is restored, there is no need for further exposure. You do not need to gather fragments of another person's story to assemble a victory. The victory of light is not found in who is revealed, but in whether truth has a firm place to stand. And when that place is secure, everything else arranges itself. Some confessions arrive indirectly: a quiet withdrawal, an authority revoked, a role reassigned without ceremony. These movements speak louder than 1,000 words. They declare that what was once called power could not withstand the light. True authority is not afraid of being questioned. False authority fears the right question most. When the right question appears, false authority dissolves, not because it is attacked, but because it has no foundation left to stand on. In Scripture, when the teachers of the law faced the questions of Jesus, they did not fall because he raised his voice. They fell because they could not answer. Truth asks questions not to humiliate, but to unveil. My child, that order is operating around you now. The right questions are being asked not by you, but by circumstances themselves. And when the right questions are asked, truth reshapes order. This reshaping shows itself as roles returning to their proper scale. Those who once spoke for you are no longer handed the microphone. Those who once decided for you are no longer assumed to be your representatives. You do not need to reclaim your voice. Your voice returns on its own when light confirms your position. And when you speak, your words do not need to be loud. They are sufficient. Sufficient to set context. Sufficient to open pathways. Sufficient for others to recalibrate. Pay attention to your own responses in this season. When confession appears, you may be urged to forgive quickly for the sake of peace. Forgiveness is good, but forgiveness is not the erasure of order. You can forgive while keeping boundaries. You can forgive without returning to old structures. Light does not ask you to sacrifice clarity in exchange for surface calm. True peace arrives when order is honored. There is another subtle temptation: the urge to explain on behalf of those who cause the distortion. You may believe this is compassion, but my child, compassion is not the shielding of consequences. When you shield consequences, you unintentionally weaken the lesson, and the cycle may return. Let each person carry their portion. This is not cruelty, it is precision. Precision is the language of divine justice. When truth reshapes order, standards are raised. What was once accepted for convenience must now be measured by value. Ambiguous agreements are no longer flexible, they become liabilities. You will find yourself invited into spaces where clarity is a prerequisite. Do not be surprised if some old doors close completely. They close because they no longer fit. And when they close, you have not lost anything, you have been preserved. When false power loses its footing, true humility begins to be honored. Not the humility born of fear, but the humility that comes from understanding. True humility does not need to impose itself. It creates space for truth to stand. You have learned how to create that space through intentional silence, through concise speech, through a consistent life. That is why, when the new order begins to form, you are not out of rhythm. You were already there from the beginning. You may witness the final attempts of false power, excessive kindness, rushed promises, offers to end things peacefully. Listen with your body. If peace does not confirm it, wait. Light is not afraid of waiting. Light knows that any structure not standing on truth will eventually grow tired. And when it grows tired, it lets go. My child, confession is a consequence, not the goal. The goal is order. When order has been restored, you do not need to track who says what next. You need to build on the new foundation, a foundation of clarity, of honored standards, of protected boundaries. What you build on that foundation will last. What does not belong will not cling. Move forward with steadiness. False power has lost its place. Truth has reshaped order. What comes next will no longer be exposure, it will be reinforcement. My beloved child, after confession has surfaced and false power has lost its footing, what remains is not chaotic aftershock, but consolidation. This is the least visible stage, yet the most important. Exposure can happen in a moment. Consolidation requires time and inner discipline. Light does not unmask falsehood and then leave. Light stays to build, and what is built in this stage will determine whether the new order endures. You will notice that consolidation does not arrive through grand declarations, but through new standards held consistently. What was once excused as flexibility is now called by its true name. Boundaries that were once tested are now respected. Decisions are no longer made based on relationships, but on values. Truth is no longer just the correct story, it becomes the way things operate. When the way of operating changes, the new order begins to take root. This is when you learn a subtle lesson. There is no need to return to repair the past. The past has completed its task, it revealed what needed to change. The new order is not built by retelling the old story with better words, it is built through new habits. How you choose partners, how you sign agreements, how you say, "Let me consider this." How you walk away when peace does not confirm. These small choices become the architecture of the future. In Scripture, when Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, he did not only raise walls, he appointed watchmen. My child, the new order also needs watchmen, and the first watchman is you. Not watching through suspicion, but through discernment. Discernment does not make you rigid, it makes you precise. Precise in recognizing what is a true invitation and what is a repetition of old patterns wearing a new mask. You may see some people attempt to adapt to the new order without changing their nature. They use the right words, adopt the right tone, but their actions do not follow. Do not rush to conclude, observe the pattern. Truth is always consistent in repetition. If words are correct but actions remain unchanged, that is not process, it is strategy. You do not need confrontation. You simply do not grant authority to what has not been proven by time. Consolidation also takes place within you. You will find yourself less reactive to whispers and commentary. Not because you have grown numb, but because you now have a foundation. That foundation is the truth you have lived, the honor that has returned, the order that has been restored. When there is a foundation, you do not need to chase every sound. You listen selectively, you respond intentionally, and your silence now is no longer defensive, it carries weight. A new responsibility comes with the new order, the responsibility of long-term consistency. Consistency does not mean never making mistakes. It means correcting them in the right place, at the right time, in the right way. When you are wrong, you correct it simply. When you do not know, you say, "I'm not sure yet." These words do not weaken you, they increase trust. The new order does not require a flawless image. It requires truth. Notice how light protects the new order. It reduces drama. Major confrontations become fewer. Decisions arrive with greater calm. You no longer need to brace yourself for every step. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means challenges are properly sized. Sized to mature you, not to exhaust you. Light does not build by erosion. It builds by refinement. You may be invited to return and clarify one last time in order to fully close the old chapter. My child, if the order has been consolidated, there is no need for a final word. Final words often serve emotion more than order. Order is preserved by not returning to places that no longer hold authority in your life. When you do not return, you send a wordless but unmistakable message. That chapter is closed because it no longer fits, not because of victory or defeat. When truth becomes a lasting foundation, standards begin to spread. Others adjust how they work with you. They come better prepared. They speak more clearly. They respect your time and boundaries, not out of fear, but because the new order shapes expectations. When expectations are clear, ambiguity has nowhere to live. And when ambiguity disappears, energy is freed for building. During this season of consolidation, remember to tend to your rhythm of rest. Rest keeps discernment sharp. Rest prevents discipline from becoming rigidity. Rest allows you to listen again to what is leading you. Enduring order is not maintained by tension. It is maintained by sustainable rhythm. Sustainable rhythm knows when to advance, when to pause, and when no decision is required. Truth does not win once, it must be lived daily. The new order will not sustain itself unless it is nourished by right choices. But my child, you have enough light, enough experience, enough peace to sustain it. You did not enter this stage to prove anything. You entered it to build for the long term. Walk forward slowly and steadily. Falsehood has fallen. Honor has returned. And now, truth does not merely stand, it becomes the foundation for everything that is to come. My beloved child, when order has been consolidated and truth has become a lasting foundation, you will step into a movement you once dared to hope for. Only in silence. Opportunities that were delayed begin to return. They do not return to test you again. They return in refined form. What once came too early, what departed through misunderstanding, what was frozen by ambiguity now finds its way back when everything is ready. Delay was not rejection. Delay was protection of timing. You may sense this return before you see it. A quiet expectancy, not overstated excitement. Not anxiety. A gentle inner readiness, as though you have been trained for this moment for a long time. This is not random intuition, it is alignment. When the inside is ready, the outside begins to move. And that movement does not need to be forced, it comes to you. Blessings released at the right time do not arrive noisily. It does not come to compensate for the past with emotion. It comes to open the future with order. The opportunities returning now do not require you to trade your peace. They come with clear terms, a sustainable pace, and respect for the boundaries you have learned to keep. You no longer need to ask, "Am I worthy?" Fit answers on your behalf. In Scripture, Joseph was not released from prison only to return to his early, unformed dreams. He was placed where the dream had structure, where authority walked with responsibility, and blessing with order. My child, what returns to you is the same. It does not come back to satisfy the ego, it comes back to serve purpose. And you are ready for that purpose because you have learned to keep the standard. The release of blessing often comes with very concrete signs: a call at the right moment, an email that opens a new direction, a meeting that seems accidental yet fits perfectly with what you are building. These signs do not require excessive interpretation. Let them confirm what you already know within. When peace increases alongside opportunity, you know you are moving at the right rhythm. Be alert to a subtle temptation in this season, the temptation to compensate too quickly. As blessing begins to flow, you may feel the urge to do more to deserve what you are receiving. But blessing is not sustained by exhaustion, it is sustained by rhythm. Remember the lesson that brought you here: go slowly to go far. Blessing released at the right time does not fear slowness, it fears misalignment. The returning opportunities will also test your discernment. Not everything that comes back needs to be received. Some things return only so you can say no with new clarity. Saying no now is not closing doors, it is affirming order. When you say no to what no longer fits, you widen space for what fits better. Blessing is not offended by boundaries. Blessing is protected by boundaries. Notice how light works. It returns what was withheld when you were not yet ready. It restores credibility in spaces where you were once misunderstood. It restores opportunities for partnership when standards are clear. It restores your voice when you no longer have to strain to speak. These restorations do not require ceremony. They enter life through very real steps. And when they do, you realize that delay spared you from premature compromise. You may feel a gentle surprise. How does everything align like this, my child? This is not a coincidence. It is a process. Light does not reward randomly. It places precisely. When you are placed correctly, what belongs to that place finds you. You do not need to pull, you only need to remain. The release of blessing also carries the responsibility of stewardship. Not stewardship through control, but through faithfulness in small things. Faithfulness to healthy work rhythms. Faithfulness to clarity in communication. Faithfulness to resting when rest is needed. These are what keep blessing from distortion. Blessing becomes distorted when it is used to prove something. Blessing endures when it is used to build. Recognize another important sign. Joy returns quietly. Not the loud joy of instant achievement, but the joy of seeing things fall into their proper grooves. You work without the feeling of running away or chasing after something. You know when to stop, when to move forward. This joy confirms that blessing is flowing in the right direction. In this season, you may again hear words that once made you doubt yourself, but they no longer carry weight. Not because they are entirely wrong, but because you now have a foundation for discernment. That foundation allows you to receive feedback without losing yourself, to adjust without collapsing, to learn without self-erasure. Blessing does not make you fragile, it makes you steady. Delay did not make you late, delay made you precise. What returns now returns in order. What is released now is released to remain. You do not need to hurry to catch up. You have arrived at the right time. And right timing is the greatest gift. Receive it not with haste, but with sober gratitude. Blessing is flowing. Opportunities are returning, and this time, you are ready to hold them for the long term. My beloved child, when delayed opportunities have returned in their proper form and blessing begins to flow in order, you will notice a change deeper than open doors. Your resources are being restored from the root. Not only what can be counted, but what you once thought had run dry, inner strength. The ability to focus. Trust in your own rhythm of living. In past years, you did not lack capacity, you lacked space. And now, as leaking structures have been sealed, space begins to return. You will find that this restoration does not come as an instant reward, but like an underground stream rising steadily. You no longer wake with the feeling of being stretched thin from the start of the day. Tasks that once drained you become simpler, not because they are easier, but because you are no longer carrying excess weight. Some meetings are no longer necessary. Some explanations no longer need to be given. Some efforts that once consumed you are now laid down. And it is precisely in that laying down that your resources are returned. The greatest resource being restored in this season is your energy for discernment. In the past, you had to spend so much strength guessing intentions, staying guarded, and preserving harmony. Now you realize you no longer need to live that way. New relationships or relationships that have been refined do not require you to read between the lines. Words and actions align. When that happens, your mind is allowed to rest. And when the mind rests, creativity returns. At the same time, the relationships in your life enter a natural season of purification, not through conflict, but through rhythm. Those who were connected to you only when you were carrying weight will gradually fall out of step, not because they are bad, but because they can no longer attach themselves to the old version of you. You are no longer a place for others to deposit pressure, project vague expectations, or lean without responsibility. And what is remarkable is this: you do not need to cut anyone off. The new rhythm does that work on its own. The relationships that remain and the new ones that are brought into your life carry an entirely different quality. They respect your sufficiency. No one pushes you to move faster. No one makes you feel not enough to belong. In these relationships, you do not have to perform strength. You are allowed to be tired. You do not have to prove understanding. You are allowed to learn. And it is precisely this permission that makes these relationships nourishing rather than draining. In Scripture, when Elisha received Elijah's mantle, he did not immediately receive visible power. He received a new rhythm of life, the rhythm of one who knows how to stay near the source. My child, the restoration in your life is the same. It is not a display. It is a return to the source. That source is not outside you. It is found where you are no longer fragmented by competing demands. When you are near the source, resources do not need to be chased, they flow. Your growth rhythm in this season, therefore, has a very clear mark. It is no longer driven by pressure. You do not work out of fear of being left behind. You do not say yes out of fear of disappointing others. You do not move forward to prove that your years of waiting were worth it. You move forward because everything is now in place to support your steps. And when support is present, growth does not need urgency. Pay attention to how light teaches you to steward blessing not by holding more, but by keeping the flow clear. You learn to say not yet without guilt. You learn to decline what is good in order to preserve what is right. You learn to leave space in your schedule not out of laziness, but out of understanding that space is where light works. A schedule with no space soon suffocates. A life with no space soon runs dry. Healthy relationships also teach you again the art of true dialogue. Not dialogue to win, but to understand. Not to control outcomes, but to preserve connection rightly. When differences arise, you do not panic. When tension appears, you do not rush to patch it over. You allow differences to be seen, because you know that what is true does not fear the light. And it is this posture that keeps these relationships from decaying under what remains unspoken. The restoration of resources shows itself in a very concrete way. You begin completing important work with less force. Not because you are less diligent, but because you are no longer scattered. When you work, you are fully present with the task. When you rest, you truly rest. When you speak, you say what is sufficient. When you are silent, that silence has purpose. This is the rhythm of someone who has passed through chaos and entered maturity. My child, maturity does not make you rigid, it makes you stable. You are not swayed by temporary praise. You do not collapse under criticism that lacks foundation. You know where you are in the journey, and therefore you do not need comparison. Comparison is a sign of lacking foundation. Maturity is the sign that a foundation is in place. And when the foundation is set, growth does not need to perform to be recognized. There will be moments when increased blessing tests your inner discipline. When resources return, you may feel tempted to use them to compensate for years of lack. But my child, light reminds you, compensation does not heal. Only order heals. So you use new resources to build, not to fill gaps. To build sustainable rhythms of work, to build clear relationships, to build choices that do not betray peace. In this season, you will notice that your joy has changed in nature. It is no longer the burst of joy that comes from immediate achievement, but the quiet joy of looking back on a day and knowing today, I lived rightly, right in rhythm, right in boundaries, right in light. This joy does not need to be widely shared, it stays. And that staying is the sign of enduring blessing. True restoration does not return you to the starting line, it carries you into a more stable phase of the journey. Here, resources no longer leak, relationships no longer drain, growth no longer rushes, and light no longer needs to constantly shield because you have learned how to remain within order. Continue walking in this rhythm. Do not hurry. Do not compare. Do not overextend. Blessing is staying with you, not like a wave, but like a river. My beloved child, when your resources have been restored, your relationships refined, and your growth rhythm has matured, something very natural begins to happen. Confirmation becomes clear. No more ambiguity. No more guessing through scattered signals. This confirmation does not arrive as applause. It comes as a quiet yet decisive recognition that you are moving in the right direction. What you have sown in order now bears fruit in order. And when fruit is ripe, no announcement is needed. People can see for themselves. You will notice that confirmation is not found in people saying more, but in how they act differently. Invitations come with a new level of respect. Proposals are presented with clarity, no longer testing boundaries. Decisions are made more efficiently because trust has been established. In the past, you may have had to explain yourself repeatedly to be understood. Now your consistency has done that work for you. When consistency endures long enough, it becomes a shared language. The outcomes revealed in this season do not carry the shape of display. They carry the shape of durability. Projects progress steadily. Agreements hold through smaller tests. Goals are reached without trading away peace. These are not the results of momentary effort. They are the fruit of a long sequence of right choices, repeated faithfully. Light does not reward impulse. Light confirms faithfulness. In Scripture, the one who sows does not stand watch hour by hour demanding growth. They sow, they tend, and they wait. In due season, the grain emerges without being summoned. My child, your season is the same. You sowed in silence, tended with patience, and waited in peace. Now the results speak on their own, and because they speak for themselves, you do not need to defend or promote them. They are protected by their quality, along with confirmation and visible outcomes. Your joy is refined. This joy no longer depends on being seen or praised. It is the joy of knowing you are living faithfully with what has been entrusted to you. You find joy in meaningful work. You find joy in keeping boundaries. You find joy in resting without guilt. This joy is not loud, but it stays, and because it stays, it sustains you. You may be surprised to realize that joy which does not need display does not make you smaller. On the contrary, it makes you steady. Those who need to perform often lack foundation. Those with foundation do not. When you no longer need to prove yourself, your energy is freed for building. And when energy is invested in building, results continue to generate results. This is the healthy cycle that light establishes. Clear confirmation also brings a final filtering. Not everyone is comfortable when you step into stability. Some were only familiar with you when you were striving. But my child, you do not need to shrink to preserve familiarity. Light does not invite you back into old versions of yourself to make others comfortable. You are invited to remain with truth, and that truth is strong enough to hold what belongs to it. Notice how revealed results simplify your life. You no longer need to manage so many relationships. You no longer need to track so many moving parts. You no longer need to explain so many decisions. This simplicity is not loss. It is the efficiency of order. When order is functioning, what is unnecessary falls away. And when what is unnecessary leaves, what is essential has room to grow. In this season, guard something precious joy that is not stolen by comparison. Comparison often appears when results become visible. It whispers that you could move faster, do more, grow bigger. But light reminds you that enough is the measure of peace. When you know what is enough, you are not afraid of missing out. When you are not afraid of missing out, you choose more accurately. And accuracy always leads to more enduring outcomes. Joy that does not need display also teaches you how to celebrate rightly, not with excess, but with clear-eyed gratitude. Gratitude for those who walked with you in the right rhythm. Gratitude for doors that closed to protect you. Gratitude for delays that matured you. Gratitude even for what did not happen because it spared you from wrong turns. With this kind of gratitude, your joy is no longer fragile. Remember that clear confirmation is not the finish line. It is a marker that tells you the order now in place can be trusted. From here, you build with quiet confidence. You expand without losing rhythm. You accept greater responsibility without sacrificing rest. Results continue to appear. But you are not led by results, you are led by light. There may come moments when you are invited onto a platform, not a noisy one, but spaces of real influence. When that happens, step forward with the humility of one who knows that light goes ahead. You do not carry the old story, you carry the new order. You do not speak to persuade, you speak to set context. And when context is right, listeners adjust themselves. True confirmation does not bind you to the gaze of others, it frees you from it. True results do not trap you in cycles of achievement. They give you freedom to choose what is right. True joy does not need display. It is deep enough to remain when all noise passes. Stay with that joy. Let the results continue to speak for themselves. Blessing has been released at the right time and you are stewarding it well. My beloved child, when the whirlwinds have quieted, when results have appeared without display, and when quiet joy has settled as a steady foundation, you will enter the deepest phase of this journey. Your mission becomes clear. Not a new title for you to wear, nor a larger role for you to strain under, but a lucid understanding of what you are called to carry. Mission does not arrive as a forced command. It comes as a perfect alignment between who you truly are and what the moment truly needs. You may have searched for your mission in earlier years, asking, "What am I called to do, but my child?" That question can only be answered when you are no longer driven by defense. Now, having passed through purification, restoration, and confirmation, the answer no longer needs to be sought, it stands before you. You realize that mission is not separate from daily life. It flows through what you do each day, through how you are present, through precision in speech and faithfulness in small things. As the mission becomes clear, destiny is confirmed. Destiny is not a fixed chain of events that robs you of freedom. Destiny is the axis to which every right choice naturally returns. When you stand on that axis, you are no longer confused at crossroads. Some options quietly remove themselves because they no longer fit. Some opportunities come toward you because they belong there. You do not need to guess. Peace confirms. In Scripture, when Ephesus was called a light among the nations, it was not because it was perfect, but because it had been placed correctly. My child, your being rightly placed is the same. It does not say you are greater, it says you are ready. Ready to let light pass through you without distorting it through fear or ambition. Ready to speak the truth without needing to win. Ready to serve without diminishing yourself. When the mission is clear, the center of your life shifts. You no longer ask, "What do I gain?" but "What does this serve?" Not because you ignore your own needs, but because you have learned that what serves rightly sustains you deeply. What does not serve the axis of mission will drain you, even if it brings short-term benefit. What does serve that axis will brighten you even when it requires patience. Light teaches you to discern by long-term consequence, not by immediate feeling. With destiny confirmed comes freedom from comparison. You no longer measure your path by someone else's map. You do not envy another's speed, nor fear being left behind. You understand that each person has a rhythm, and your rhythm is necessary for your portion of the work. When you honor that rhythm, you do not collide, you synchronize. And synchronization is the language of divine effectiveness. You may be surprised to find that even as the mission becomes clear, small tests still appear, not to make you doubt your calling, but to refine your faithfulness. Light does not lift you up and then abandon you. Light walks with you through details. These tests are not dramatic. They are daily choices, speaking truth or speaking what is easy, keeping the standard or making a small compromise, resting at the right time or pushing past peace. Each right choice strengthens destiny. As you walk in light without obstruction, you will sense something very real, weighty, lightness. You are not straining, yet your words carry weight. You are not performing, yet your presence brings order. You are not imposing, yet others adjust. This is not the power of control, it is the power of alignment. When what is inside matches what is outside, authority appears without being named. Clarity of mission also teaches you to refuse at the right time. Not everything good belongs to you. Not every invitation needs acceptance. Saying no now is not closing doors, it is protecting flow. Flow must remain clear for life to travel far. Each time you say no to what is off axis, you say yes to what is on axis, and what is on axis remains. Notice how light simplifies your mission. It removes excess layers, empty slogans, and performative goals. What remains is a clear core. You are called to bring order where there is chaos, to speak truth where there is ambiguity, to remain steady where others rush. You do not need to do everything. You need to do your part, and that part is enough. In this season, you may feel a new impulse to give back, not from a place of proud excess, but from having received enough. You share experience without lecturing. You guide without controlling. You are present without occupying space. Giving back in this way does not diminish you. It expands influence in a healthy way. Light prefers to move through those who know how to give back in rhythm. Destiny being confirmed does not mean you know the entire future. It means you are no longer afraid of it. You know you are walking on the right axis, and the right axis always allows adjustment without losing direction. When change comes, you do not panic. When pace slows, you do not despair. When momentum increases, you do not grow proud. You remain with the light, and the light remains with you. Mission does not weigh you down, it clarifies you. Destiny does not bind you, it frees you from unnecessary detours. And light does not push you forward, it walks with you as you step. You are moving without obstruction, not because challenges have disappeared, but because you now have an axis. Continue with the calm of one who knows where they stand. The remainder of the journey does not require noise. It requires steady faithfulness, and you already have enough to go all the way. My beloved child, when your mission has been clarified and your destiny confirmed, you may think that all major trials are now behind you. But listen carefully to me before light brings you into a season of long-term stability. There is always a final refinement, not to make you doubt yourself, not to pull you backward, but to seal what has been placed within you. This refinement is not loud or violent like the storms you faced before. It is subtle, deep, and touches the smallest corners, places I only reach once you have matured enough to bear it. You will recognize that this final refinement does not come through obvious enemies, but through what feels familiar, seemingly harmless choices, invitations that resemble old paths, good opportunities that are just slightly out of rhythm. If before you were tested by fear, now you are tested by comfort. Comfort is not wrong, but if it becomes your guide, you can drift without realizing it. That is why light does not withdraw, it draws closer than ever. This refinement does not ask whether you are strong, it asks whether you are faithful to what you already know. Faithful when no one is pushing you, faithful when no one is checking, faithful when results are already good enough that you could stop. Here, light measures the depth of your transformation, not transformation that survives crisis, but transformation that remains steady within the new order without slipping back. In Scripture, after David was anointed, he did not step immediately onto the throne. He returned to the fields, to small, unnoticed tasks where no one applauded. That was not regression, it was refinement. My child, light also brings you back to simple things, daily decisions, small interactions, moments that go unseen to see whether your inner axis is truly secure. This final refinement often feels unclear. There are no dramatic signals, no events forcing you to react. The very absence of urgency is the test. Can you keep rhythm when there is no pressure? Can you live rightly without immediate reward? Can you keep your word when no one reminds you? Light watches these things, not to judge you, but to strengthen what is already true. Understand this correctly, this refinement is not meant to take anything from you. It is meant to remove tiny misalignments that could grow larger over time. A small compromise today can become a pattern tomorrow. Ignoring intuition once can reopen the door to ambiguity. That is why light holds you with gentle alerts, a slight unrest, a subtle hesitation, a quiet nudge to pause. Do not dismiss these signals. They are guardrails. You will find yourself invited to choose again what you have already chosen, not because you forgot, but because the right choices must be renewed. Each time you choose again, the choice sinks deeper into who you are. You no longer choose because you fear consequences. You choose because this is who you are. When the right choice becomes natural, you are no longer easily pulled. This is the purpose of the final refinement. A clear sign that light is keeping you aligned is increasing simplicity. You no longer have to weigh everything. Many options remove themselves. Many invitations fall away on their own, not because you have closed your heart, but because your axis is clear. When the axis is clear, what does not fit does not argue. It simply does not stay. This simplicity is grace, not limitation. In this season, you may experience a different kind of weariness, not the exhaustion of resistance, but the fatigue of fine-tuning. Tired from speaking truth instead of what is easy. Tired from keeping standards in small details. But my child, this kind of tiredness does not drain you. It is like the fatigue of laying foundations quiet, focused, purposeful. Proper rest will turn this fatigue into endurance. Light keeps you from drifting by not letting you walk alone. You may not always see heaven intervene dramatically, but you will notice you are not abandoned. When you are about to speak out of alignment, you pause. When you are about to sign something unclear, you slow down. When you are about to return to an old path, a door does not open. This is not coincidence. This is protection. In this final refinement, you also learn a deep lesson. You are not called to react to every misalignment around you. You are not called to fix everything. You are called to remain straight. When you remain straight, light will handle what is crooked around you more precisely than you imagine. You do not need to carry others' burdens. You need to preserve the purity of your own axis. Light also tests you at a very subtle point how you use your new understanding. You can now see misalignment quickly, but do you use that sight to elevate yourself or to stay humble? Insight without humility will pull you off course. That is why light invites you to keep your heart soft, even as your vision sharpens. Soft, so you do not become harsh. Sharp, so you do not become blind. As this refinement nears completion, you will sense something unmistakable, a steadiness that no longer depends on circumstances. Even when things around you shift, your inner axis does not shake. You do not need to know every step ahead. You only need to know that you are moving in the right direction. This knowing is not loud, it is deep, like an anchor. And when you are anchored, you do not fear the waves. Remember this truth: light does not only lead you to the right place, light keeps you there in the right way. The final refinement is not meant to prolong the journey, but to ensure that when you arrive, you do not lose yourself. When you hold to this, you do not merely step into the future, you remain within that future with wholeness. Continue walking in quiet faithfulness. Light is very near, and the final stage is no longer a trial, it rests within a destiny that has been sealed. My beloved child, when the final refinement has been completed and light has kept you standing steady and aligned, what follows is not a new climax, but divine rest. This rest is not stopping because of exhaustion, nor withdrawing from responsibility. Rest is being settled in the right place, working without strain, walking without needing to defend yourself before every gaze. Rest is the state in which you no longer have to prove anything because your life now speaks for itself. You will recognize that divine rest does not arrive as emotional exhilaration, but as deep stability. You wake in the morning, no longer needing to check whether you are enough today. You know you are enough not because of achievements, but because your inner axis is secure. When the axis is secure, external fluctuations no longer define you. They pass through, and you remain. You remain with the rhythm that has been set, with the boundaries that have been kept, with light that has become your living environment rather than a destination. This rest opens the door to full freedom, freedom not driven by fear and not tempted by display. You are free to say yes when it aligns and no when it does not. You are free to move slowly without guilt, to move quickly when timing is ripe without pride. You are free to rest without shame, to work without being pulled into proving yourself. This freedom is not loud, it is ordered, and that order keeps you safe. In Scripture, the people were led into the promised land not to live in constant warfare, but to dwell in order each under their own vine. Unafraid, my child, your rest is the same. It does not deny the presence of smaller challenges, it sizes them correctly. So you mature without being depleted. When rest is established, challenges are no longer threats, they become opportunities for refinement. A life that walks long-term in light carries a clear mark, consistency without effort. You do not have to remember what you promised in order to maintain an image. You keep your word because it is who you are. You do not have to strain to be honest. You are honest because ambiguity exhausts you. You do not have to manage emotions to respond correctly. You respond slowly because peace goes first. This kind of consistency is not rigidity, it is the freedom of one who has a foundation. In divine rest, your life becomes a testimony without explanation. People observe your rhythm of work, rest, speech, and silence, and they understand that this is a life rightly placed. You do not need to explain light. Light moves through you in small decisions, in how you face pressure, in kindness without conditions, in boundaries without compromise. Rest also teaches you a deep lesson about time. Where once time may have felt like something to chase or resist, now it becomes an ally. You are not hurried by fear of being late, nor do you delay out of fear of responsibility. You work by seasons, rest by rhythm, and allow what needs to ripen fully. When time becomes an ally, you are no longer swept into collective urgency. You remain still, and that stillness creates difference. Full freedom is also revealed in how you use your voice. You do not speak to fill silence. You speak when words carry value. You do not argue to win. You set context so truth can stand. You are not silent out of fear. You are silent because there is no need. Your voice now has weight because it is upheld by a consistent life. Those who listen sense this not through technique, but through authenticity. A life that walks long-term in light also carries enduring joy. This joy is not eroded by change. It does not require events to activate it. It is the joy of knowing you are living faithfully with what has been entrusted to you, standing where you are meant to stand, and moving in the direction you are meant to go. This joy allows you to celebrate small things, honor the ordinary, and give thanks even for days when nothing remarkable happens, because those days preserve the foundation. Divine rest does not remove you from the world. It teaches you how to be rightly present within it. You participate without being swept away. You serve without being drained. You lead without controlling. You learn to entrust light to let light work where you cannot reach. When you do this, burden lifts from your shoulders, and effectiveness increases without sacrificing peace. There may be moments when you are reminded of the journey behind you, the traps, the delays, the exposures, the restorations. Remember this, that journey was not meant to make you exceptional. It was meant to make you stable. Stable enough not to repeat old patterns. Stable enough to lead. Stable enough to remain in what is good without destroying it through haste or self-satisfaction. Stable enough that when light entrusts you with more, you do not lose rhythm. My child, divine rest also entrusts you with one final responsibility: to keep your heart soft. Soft so you do not grow bitter. Soft so you do not become careless. Soft so you continue to learn. A soft heart does not oppose a firm axis. It protects that axis from pride. When a soft heart and a firm axis walk together, your life becomes a healthy channel, one through which light flows without distortion. As you close this entire journey, carry with you a simple yet profound truth. Light did not bring you here only to leave you. Light remains within your rhythm of living, your choices, your rest, your freedom. You no longer need to seek the light, you live within it. And to live long-term in light does not mean there is no darkness around you. It means darkness no longer has the authority to lead. Rest now. Not rest in order to stop walking, but rest in order to walk rightly. Guard your freedom through order. Guard your joy through gratitude. Guard your destiny through quiet faithfulness. The story does not end here. It stabilizes here, so that from this foundation, everything you build will be enduring, radiant, and lasting. Go forward. Light walks with you today, tomorrow, and in every step that follows. My beloved child, I want you to pause and listen. There are things that cannot be understood by the mind alone. They require a stillness deep enough to reach the truest place within you. You have walked a journey not measured by chapters or by days. This journey is measured by the moments you chose light when everything was obscured, the moments you held your composure when pulled toward a reaction, the moments you said no when your heart wanted to please, the moments you stopped at the right time, even knowing that stopping would disappoint others. If you look back, you will understand this. The greatest thing you gained was not an external outcome, but an internal truth. You returned to yourself in my light. I know there were stretches no one saw, tears you wiped away before stepping outside, nights when you lay awake listening to your heartbeat, wondering why the good you did was misunderstood, why your kindness was exploited, why your silence was twisted into a story that did not belong to you. I know, and I want you to know this: what you thought was unseen, heaven recorded as marks of purity, not so you would live in the past, but so you could step into the future with an unshakable foundation. I saw you, and I kept you. You learned that not every battle requires a voice. Some battles require intentional silence. You learned that quick reaction is often the key that opens a trap, while calmness is the lock that seals the schemes. You learned that some people are not threatened by your gentleness. They are threatened by your clarity. Because when you are clear, you are no longer easily driven by emotion. When you are clear, you no longer need to prove. When you are clear, you no longer reopen negotiations with what I have already made plain. And my child, that is when you truly begin to be free. Not freedom to do whatever you want, but freedom from being controlled by anything. Perhaps you once thought freedom meant escaping a certain person, a situation, or a specific trap. But now you understand freedom more deeply. Freedom is when your heart is no longer hooked into old loops. Freedom is when you are no longer pulled by the need to be immediately understood. Freedom is when you can step away from ambiguity without slamming doors, because you no longer owe anyone prolonged explanations. Freedom is when you can stand before distortion without becoming a judge. You simply stand in truth, and truth is enough to draw the line. That line protects you better than any argument ever could. I also want you to remember this: the seasons when you lost sleep from overthinking, the seasons you blamed yourself for trusting, the seasons you tried to explain yourself to those unwilling to understand. All of these did something you did not realize at the time. They forged a new measure within you. That measure is no longer, "Do they like me?" but "Is this aligned with the light?" It is no longer, "Can I keep them?" but "Am I keeping myself?" It is no longer, "Am I winning?" but "Am I at peace?" And when the measure changes, your life changes. You cannot live the same life once you are living by a new measure. Of everything I led you through, what I value most is not that you avoided the trap, but that you did not lose your heart. Some escape traps only to become bitter. Some overcome but carry habits of constant defense. Some are vindicated and turn vindication into a weapon. I did not want that for you. I wanted you to emerge not only right, but clean. Clean does not mean naive. Clean means knowing without being contaminated. Clean means discerning without contempt. Clean means speaking truth without needing others to fall so you can stand. You have begun to learn this, and that is the sign you are maturing in the light. There is something you must understand about divine justice. It does not come to satisfy emotional revenge. It comes to restore order. And once order is restored, it does not only change your past story, it changes how you enter the next ones. Order teaches you to move slowly and steadily. Order teaches you not to sign when clarity is absent. Order teaches you not to share your life with those who cannot keep it. Order teaches you to know what is enough and not demand more to soothe fear. Order teaches you that peace is not the final reward. Peace is the standard from the beginning. So, my closing word to you is, not everything will be fine in the sense that everything will be easy. My closing word is this: you have become someone who knows how to keep the light. And one who knows how to keep the light will not wander for long. You may stumble, but you will rise faster because you recognize misalignment. You may be tested, but you will discern earlier because you hear the signal. You may be invited back into old loops, but you will decline gently because you no longer need to prove anything. Your maturity is not that you face no more trials. It is that trials no longer own you. I want to speak to you about those who hurt you, not so you return to them, nor so you continue thinking about them, but so you are released from a subtle burden, the burden of needing to understand why they were the way they were. My child, there are questions you do not need answered in order to have peace. You do not need to understand their motives to move forward. You do not need an apology to be free. You do not need to see them change in order to live well. Some truths only need to be named rightly and laid down. They misaligned. They were manipulated. They took advantage, and you escaped. When you lay it down like this, you do not carry resentment, you carry wisdom. The wisdom is boundaries. The wisdom is discernment. The wisdom is never renegotiating what I have already made clear. My beloved child, you may once have feared that if you stayed silent, others would write your story however they wished. But now you see this: a true story is not written by rumors, it is written by a life. Your consistent life is a manuscript no one can edit. As you continue to live rightly, as you continue to work with faithfulness, love with wisdom, and show up with maturity, every false narrative will eventually expose itself because it cannot align with reality. And reality, my child, endures far longer than any whisper. I want you to move forward with a new posture, not a posture of defense, but a posture of authority, Authority does not mean controlling everything. Authority means knowing you have the right to choose your rhythm, your place, your people, your words, and your silence. You have the right not to over-explain. You have the right to end a conversation. You have the right to leave an environment that drains you. You have the right to wait for more information. You have the right to say, "I will respond later," instead of reacting immediately. When you exercise this authority, you do not harm others, you simply protect the order I have restored within you. And when you keep that order, you will witness something remarkable. Blessing no longer comes once like a wave, it remains like a river. That river will carry new opportunities, healthy relationships, and doors opened with respect. But my child, the most precious thing is not what you receive. It is that you know how to keep it. You keep it through gratitude. You keep it through rest. You keep it through measured speech. You keep it through clear boundaries. You keep it through a soft heart and a steady axis. When you know how to keep what you are given, you no longer fear losing it. Because you understand this truth, what belongs to the light will always find its way back when you remain in the right place. Remember that this journey was never meant for you alone. I led you through it so that you could become someone who brings order to others, not by fixing them, but by being rightly present. Some will observe your rhythm and learn how to slow down. Some will see your boundaries and learn how to respect themselves. Some will see your faithfulness and learn how not to compromise. You do not need to teach. Your life will teach. You do not need to argue. Your peace will speak. You do not need to defend your honor. Honor will stand because it is upheld by truth. So my closing invitation to you is this: rest in the light. But do not fall asleep in complacency. Keep your heart soft. But do not open doors to ambiguity. Love deeply, but do not sacrifice clarity. Give generously, but do not give in order to be seen. Work diligently, but do not work to prove your worth. You already have worth, and it does not come from a platform. Your worth comes from being my child, from choosing the light even when no one was watching. If you want one sentence to carry with you as you step beyond this final page, let it be this: you no longer have to run from traps. You have learned how to live where traps no longer have authority. And when traps lose their power, you do not merely escape. You are free to build a new life that is clean, clear, and enduring. That life is not perfect, but it is consistent, not showy, but steady, not loud, but luminous. And it is that light which will lead you through every season yet to come. My beloved child, I have been here from the beginning in the days you were silent. In the nights you trembled. In the moments you had to choose between peace and proving yourself. I was here when you closed the doors that needed closing. And I was here when you opened the doors I had prepared. I did not only lead you out of chaos, I led you into a new rhythm of living. That rhythm will protect you not through tension, but through clarity. And as you live within it, you will no longer ask, "When will things get better?" You will see that the moment you begin to walk rightly, things already start to improve. Go with a peaceful heart and alert eyes. Go without the need to prove anything. Go without reopening negotiations. Go knowing that light is not only ahead of you like a lamp, light is within you like an axis. And that axis will hold you today, tomorrow, and in all the days to come. Thank you for listening to today's message. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue receiving words of life together, building a firm faith and walking in the boundless love of the Lord. Amen.